Hi guys, welcome to this next episode of Ashley's Digital China. Today I bring you a phenomenal new guest, Aurelien Rigart, and we're going to talk about the private traffic in China and what is social commerce all about in the country and globally. Aurelien, phenomenal to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and I really look forward for our conversation today.
Aurelien, you've been in mainland China for the past 12 years, living in Shanghai and working for IT Consulting, the company that focuses very much on empowering businesses with the private traffic and this first-party owned data. Just before we started recording, we were talking about the fact that when it comes to retail in China, right, there's a few ways. First of all, there is like Jingdong, Tmall, and other e-commerce platforms. There's, of course, offline retail. And then there is the social commerce element, right? That comes in a form of WeChat official account, social CRM, your website data, etc. And this is exactly the third bucket. The social commerce bucket is the one where you are specializing and working in. So in your view, when it comes to social commerce in China, what is so special about this market and how does it compare to the rest of the world?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question here. So basically, China is a very specific market. So obviously, we know that, like for all the people not living in China, a quick recap. So all of your Facebook, your Google, and all like the Instagram and so on are not functioning in China. So in China, like for, let's say the last like 15 years, like the dominant way for brands to connect with users has been like by using marketplaces. The marketplace, like in the West, like we have, like the Amazon, but in China, we're going to have basically JD and Tmall. And overall brands, they've been, like doing about 90% of their, like revenues on those marketplaces. So they didn't need to have, like a direct connection because, like the playbook for success in China was like, yeah, just open your Tmall, open your JD. If you have a good brand recognition, obviously you do a little bit of like social media. You have, obviously your KOL, your KOC, your superstar, and you're going to be, like totally fine. And that was really the market, like up until like the last like 5-6 years. And when, like brand realized that, like working with private traffic, with public traffic was great, but that they would have like zero ownership of the data and zero ownership and loyalty with the users. So, like brands have been, at one point, like extremely successful, but the new collection, they will go from like being here to being there. So they realized that, like, okay, in China, we're doing 90% there, but, like in Europe or in the US, it's a fair balance, like 50-50, 50% for public, 50% for private. So brands, in order to, like remain, like active and having the opportunity to, like stay, like having a little bit less oscillation in China, they understood that, like the right way to move forward was to have something a little bit more, dynamic when it comes to the ownership of first-party data. However, like the biggest challenge that came into effect was like websites do not work in China. The second part is like email direct marketing doesn't work in China or very little. So, like maybe in the West, we'll have like opening rates of like, I don't know, like maybe 7 to 12% for EDM, or like you can boost it up like for a very specific campaign a little bit higher. But here in China, that will be like lower than like 2-3%. So like email direct marketing like doesn't really work. And the same thing with SMS marketing. So those are like going to be good complement to have. So that was the biggest challenge. So how do you, ensure private traffic, could exist and first party data could exist when, website, email marketing and SMS marketing do not work? And, going back to, like the first sentence is like China is very different. So emerged basically in 2011, this like amazing communication app that is WeChat. And then on WeChat was, like added, like one step at a time, like specific features in order to complement, like basically everything that is happening on WeChat. And those compliments, like were, like setting up like specific APIs that would empower the WeChat official account to deliver, like specific message to followers. And then, like with those, APIs, you had the opportunity to add, like some CRM that we call social CRM in China, and you have the chance to add, like all like the different systems. And in 2017 were born the mini programs, and throughout the mini program, that was really the first, or I would say like the first or second like way for brands to actually, having the chance to not have a website, but having something that was actually used by the Chinese consumer. So in that past specific moment was really the birth of like private traffic in China. And obviously those kind of things are continuing all the way to right now. And like you were, like mentioning at the beginning, like the empowerment of like private traffic for basically the retail funnel, which has been in 2023 actually the most important thing that brands need to do. Because now, after having the empowerment of their private traffic with their official account, WeChat official account, their social CRM, their mini program, now they realize that when their followers goes in their stores, if they're not buyers of their good, they're not going to be in their CRM. They're not going to be in their POS. So how do you work, how do you have the chance to retarget a user that is actually going to your store? And this is when, like WeCom has existed for the last couple of years as kind of like a copycat, or how do you say, like another version of like a Ding Talk or like a Microsoft Teams. But now in 2021, it actually became a super powerful application for clienteling that has the opportunity to actually connect with the user on WeCom. So that's a very long answer, but like basically that's what brands like nowadays they need to do in order to remain, like relevant. So they need to adopt a very different strategy, which is different yet very, very similar to what they're doing globally. Just need to be kind of like localized and translated and be used like in a very smart way.
Fantastic introduction, and even some history background. I would say the development steps of this social commerce vision, in China. When it comes to the operations, when you explain it, it seems very complex, that includes a lot of steps, a lot of disconnected seemingly channels, and also a lot of manpower. So we all remember the time in 2020, 2021, when every brand was operating through those assistants in the shops, where there was community group buying that was booming, when private traffic really went through the roof, because even for basic necessities such as groceries, you had to be part of a certain community and ultimately operate in a very different format. So where are we right now in 2023, as the pandemic has kind of come down a little bit and business is returning back to a more structured way of operating? Does it still require a lot of people and very complicated setup, or is it clear and clean now?
Biggest issue when it comes to private traffic and like the overall layers of digital transformation is like, how do you run like a lean, like P&L? It's great to do all those initiatives, but those initiatives, are going to be very costly. Like remember what we said earlier, like back in the days, that was like 90% of your revenues that were made, like in a specific, like way for public. So now, how do we make sure that we have the chance to, like set, like some projects, and the capex investment for this project is not going to kill the brand and like not going to lower the profitability? It's great to build loyalty, but like data as a cost as well. So it's not, like brands should not move, say, oh, like let's go full into this. You should go full in, but making sure that you have some sense of understanding of like how you're going to judge the profitability of your project. So I think the key part is for these kind of things is like to have a look, at, the global ecosystem and what actually can be localized in China, remaining PIPL compliance. So PIPL is the Personal Information Protection Law. Maybe we're going to touch base on it at a later stage. But, you know, like some brands have developed some amazing systems globally. And if they have chosen the right system, maybe, I'm saying maybe, those systems could be, you know, like localized into the Chinese market that will, you know, help them reducing, you know, like tremendously their investment. And I think, you know, like one of the most important things is like to try to understand, you know, like what the brand needs to do and what the brand needs to have. So for example, in 2022 or 2021, there's been like a huge rush, you know, like social CRM was the key trend. You know, everybody needed to have a social CRM. It was the same, you know, like in 2018 or 2019, if you were a brand and you didn't have a mini program, you're not a good brand. So people were doing mini program. They had no idea, oh, I need a mini program. Even the macro and the micro
Even
goals,
if
the
you
mini program
didn't.
didn't make any. Oh, and they killed those projects like within like one year maximum. So like in 2021, 2022, so all the brands like they jump onto the bandwagon of, oh, let me have a social CRM. And the reality is that most of the brands, they didn't understand that it's not because you have one system that the system is just going to move by itself. You know, AI is not like fully there yet. So there's a lot of things to operate those systems and making sure that those systems are going to be relevant and are going to be working properly and giving you the kind of data and the analytics that you need in order to drive your business. So what we have seen is that, you know, after, you know, like those 2 years where people were, you know, going crazy, spending a lot of money, they saw that they were not necessarily making the right investment and their P&L was actually suffering from this. So like in the end, they were like, okay, you know, Timo, we're struggling, but here we are also kind of like struggling. So the idea for brand is like, depending on obviously the size and the level of maturity, and we're working, you know, like also, you know, like with different groups, how do you have the chance to go, you know, like really MVP and define actually for your brands and for the different assets that you have for brands, like a brand that is penetrating the Chinese market that has like a strong, you know, like brand awareness is not going to be the same as a brand that do not have a strong brand awareness, or depending on the amount of like retail stores you have, or depending on like the presence you're going to have on the marketplace, the strategy is going to be very different for one brand to another. So the key elements, you know, like of this is like, how do you define, you know, like what should be, you know, like the MVP for you in terms of digital transformation. So for example, I'll take an example. I cannot name the brand, but, you know, like we're talking with, you know, like with one of the really nice like fashion brand having 20 stores in China. And last year, you know, like because of everything that was happening, they were really suffering. So their goal for this year was like to actually not invest further, but to find ways to make their P&L more efficient. So generating more revenue, but like keeping the same cost. So what we had to do with them is like trying to understand, okay, in terms of digital transformation, what are you guys, you know, like doing that, you know, like can be, you know, like change a little bit. So we dug a little bit into it, and what we saw is that basically the budget that they were investing for the social CRM was the exact same right budget that would be fit for WeCom. And considering that they have 20 stores, this was making much more sense for them to invest into having the right clienteling system instead of having a social CRM that, yes, for sure, will help them, you know, like getting 1 or 2 or 3%, you know, like visibility or understanding of their entire database. But WeCom was giving them the opportunity within their 20 retail stores to really target really effectively their marketing sales qualified lead existing customer and their VVIPs. So that was like the biggest difference. So for that brand, now that they have, you know, like this part, you know, like very solid, and that they're making way more revenue than before because of, you know, like private traffic and the digital transformation. Now they can go back to like building the second layer. So we have the first layer for them that is WeCom, and they can build a second layer. And then if they want to build clienteling app or something else, then they can start building on top of it. So I think the key element is like, how do you like, number one, make your team more efficient? Because that's digital transformation is about this. If you can equip your team with systems that are actually going to make them, giving them the ability to talk to maybe 150 clients a day versus them doing manually and talking to 10 clients a day, then like they're going to be like 10 or 15 times more efficient. So this is when you're going to save them money and like generate revenue. And at the same time, making sure that the investments are going, you know, like in the right direction. And I'll take a second example with, you know, like one of another fashion brand. they were like initiating their journey on digital transformation, and they were really keen on, you know, like setting up a mini program to start. And the reality is, like, when we looked at their figures, when we look at their, you know, official account followers, at their number of store, at their brand awareness, like basically the conclusion was like, okay, the investment for the mini program would be this much, and the investment for the clienteling will be this much. The ROI for the clienteling will be this much, and the ROI for the mini program, considering where the brand is, will be this much. So therefore, if you invest, you know, like into the right system and the right work stream to start with, then you can make more money, and then you can grow your brand.
This is beautiful, a very structured explanation on the operation. Ultimately, it is still going to be quite expensive, right, to run the operations, and you need to make it a part of your business kind of strategic decision, right? Everybody is running into social commerce, but you need to not run blindly. So then I've got an expert opinion from you that I need. When it comes to, let's imagine, social commerce, and then we come, or let's call it private traffic, or let's call it social commerce. So social CRM, one is social CRM, the other one is social commerce, we call private traffic. Who is qualified for this next step? If you were to speak with a client and you say, you know what, if you have less than 100,000 people on your CRM, you're not yet fit for, let's say, social CRM. So what are some of the qualifiers for social CRM, in your view, in your professional opinion? And when it comes to private traffic / social commerce / WeCom, what are some of the pre-qualifiers?
That's an amazing question, and the answer is a little bit complex, I would say. I would say that the key element to determine whether or not like you should move, you know, like forward with, you know, like those process of digital transformation is really depending on like how can you measure, you know, like the addition of like revenue due to, you know, like that specific project to your, you know, to your top line. For example, you know, like we're managing, you know, like another brand that is, you know, like not having Tmall, not having JD, and that is making, you know, like way more than like 5,000 orders a day in China on an app, and yet they are using nothing of what we're talking today. No social CRM, they're just using an app. No social CRM, no fancy KOL, and those kind of things. And so in the end, you're like, that's like super counterintuitive. But the reality is like going and like, I would not go to them and trying to sell them on those kind of things because they don't need it. Like they're like, you know, like not, you know, like in a need to add, you know, like their cost to their operation, or, you know, like in terms of investment, they need to run a lean engine. But, you know, like going back to the first comment that I made. So if let's say that like you're a luxury boutique, or you have the opportunity to, let's say, by empowering your sales associates, or not even like necessarily your sales associate, because it can be also customer service. Let's say you don't have a retail presence to start with. Let's say you operate, you know, like a very lean business where you do pop-ups here and there. You know, like if you have the chance to actually, you know, like connect your users, you know, like directly with, you know, like a customer service, which actually become a sales associate afterwards, then you have the ability to build this proximity. And the reason why, you know, like this is the thing that any brand should consider, no matter what, unless you're like a crazy brand or like a very lucky brand. But for most of the brand, you know, like the key element is how do you capture the attention of the user for a brand? And we've seen that it's almost impossible right now. So now, you know, like back in 2020, when you're opening your WeChat app on your phone, like the first thing you will see like all those push messages from all the different brands. And for all of them, if you wanted to have, you know, like this little like number one to be closed, you needed to open the post and then you needed to close it. And that will bring some visibility to the brand. But now it becomes just a little red dot. So that means like people nowadays, they don't even open their WeChat official account anymore. So when brands were having like opening rate which were anywhere from like, let's say 4 or 5% to 12%, you know, like now, like this, let's say 4 to 14 has actually switched from like 2 to 10 or 2 to 8. So like the opening rate of like the WeChat official account post has decreased like significantly over time. So means like brands, they don't have the opportunity to capture the user. So now they're like, okay, wow, where can we capture the user? Let's do Xiaohongshu, let's do Douyin. Like Tmall was actually a great idea, or JD was actually a great idea. Oh, Weibo, okay, like now we need to do Weibo. So we need to be all over the place, but like even on those places, really hard to capture the user. So that's why, you know, having the opportunity to have like the clienteling and to use WeCom, and one of the most effective way today to target users and to have like some sort of visibility for the brand is to use the moments of the sales associate in order to publish some content, and those contents are going to be published for the brand. I don't know anybody in China that doesn't take their phone and spend like a good like 5 minutes scrolling through the entirety of the moment and be like, oh, I already saw those moments 3 times. And then like 2 hours later, scrolling back moments, oh, again, this moment. So what it means is that by like setting things in a proper way, you actually have the opportunity to make sure that you're going to have some sort of visibility. That's number one. And number two, like the sales associate or customer, you know, service associate have the chance to send directly, you know, like a message to, you know, like the customer or to like the marketing or sales qualified leads. So obviously you don't want to abuse, you know, like those messages, because otherwise you're going to be seen as spammy, and it's going to be the same with the publication that you can have on your moment. However, like this is like a free way, like for brands to have the chance to actually target and to get the user and to interact with them for free, where interaction on Tmall, JD, or, you know, like in a lot of ways on, you know, like Weibo or Xiaohongshu or Douyin is going to cost you, you know, like a lot of money all the time. And it's not going to be, you know, like necessarily one-on-one connection. So, you know, like going back to your question, like when do brands need to start? Like for me, like this is like the minimum, like brand needs to start from the beginning right there, right away. Then in terms of like the rest for social CRM and, you know, like the rest and potentially mini program and other things, like brands can get there. So let's say that, you know, like the answer that I just gave you can be actually altered and changed a little bit. It is going to depend a lot as well on, you know, what kind of product you're selling. Let's say if you're like more like a FMCG and you're selling, you know, like product that costs, you know, like maybe like anywhere from like 50 to like a 200, 300 or 400 RMB, then maybe, you know, like doing, you know, like one-on-one, you know, help, one-on-one conciergerie is going to be too expensive for the return on investment that is going to bring you. So therefore, this is when like probably you want to start more with like a social CRM and having, you know, like more the opportunity to have like a bigger control over the crowd and like the different segmented persona that you can build. But, you know, like tomorrow, if you do like luxury cosmetic, you can make sure that you can work into finding ways to identify, you know, like who are going to be your high net worth individual, and find a way to kind of like direct them, you know, like from, you know, like the social CRM to the customer service or to your sales associate, in order to be able to, you know, like to build, you know, like a mechanism between those two systems. So again, depending on the brand, the positioning, I would say if you're like more like on the luxury or high-end fashion, I would say the clienteling aspect. So the WeCom part is the most crucial one. And then social CRM, you know, as you mentioned, like I think if you're like a good brand above, let's say 25,000 like followers, you can start doing things. And you can start doing things by also ensuring that you're not going to use a system that is going to cost you too much money, or pay a consultancy that is going to cost you like basically all your budget. So you need to be able to invest in a smart way into this. And then like if you want to get into, you know, like more CDP that can help you to have like a full understanding of like the entirety of the ecosystem, or like if you want to have like very deep analytics, then like that will be, you know, like a little bit more at the tip of the iceberg, I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you, Aurelien. So to summarize, Any and every brand operating in China today needs to start with their shop associates in the shops, collecting and looping and capturing their private traffic right away, right? And that has been going on for years. So if you're not doing that, doesn't matter whether you're Watson's, 7-Eleven, luxury brand, or you're selling noodles, it really starts there. The second step is one-on-one's conciergerie, if it is a luxury brand, right? And this can later on be looped into the, obviously, WeCom and creating those profiles and searching for them outside of your immediate circle. But if you are a mass product, starting from 25,000 followers, that's when you can start considering building a CRM, segmenting customers, and really delivering them more personalized and tailored messages, and then basically building from there. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And like just to illustrate this with like a figure, like we're working with a brand that has like 100 stores in China. And like we were having this discussion, like we were like discussing about how to challenge this initiative. Does it make sense to do it or not? And when you have 100 stores, it's fair to say that, like you're going to have 10 people a day walking into that stores, into those stores. So basically that's like 1,000, like marketing or sales qualified leads that are entering your stores every single day. So you multiply it by 365, then you understand, like, obviously those 10s are not going to be maybe the same, but you understand that, like, if you do it well, that's like close to 250,000 people that you have the chance to onboard on your own database, and converting them as like marketing qualified lead and having the chance to interact with them afterwards. So obviously not all the brands have 100 stores, but like you can do the same scenario if you have like 5 stores and 10 stores, and trying to see, okay, I have 5 stores. That means like every single day I have the opportunity to onboard like 50 like marketing or sales qualified leads or existing clients, and to retarget them. And those are not, people have been spending so much money on like acquisition of follower. I need follower. Like, how can you guarantee like I'm going to get new followers? The reality is like most of, a lot of PR and marketing agency have been focusing on like acquisition of new followers, but the quality of those new followers, like, can be questions very often. Like we've seen some practices where, like we open, like the database of our users, and then like we see they're all basically fake followers, And so the idea is like, how do you use like specific, like assets that you have in order to collect, like user data, and especially when you can say those are super highly qualified users. Why would you spend so much money hiring KOL, KOC to do like publication on WeChat away that's like only like 5% of the people will read, where you will not make the effort where you have like super qualified people just to set like interaction with them? That's for me, that's the craziest part, where like brands will allocate millions of RMB towards like PR and marketing, but like will attribute like very tiny budget to capturing like people that are in their stores, which are the most qualified leads.
And this is extremely, extremely important, because on social media, we all know in China, just like in the rest of the world, between 30 to probably 60% of followers are all bots, right? So it's really not about the number of those online interactions and even the quality of those online interactions, because everything can be faked and bought on Taobao for very cheaply. And right now, with more and more crackdowns, it becomes more expensive, but ultimately everything can be bought. The follow, the like, the personalized comment, the ongoing communication, even the purchases can be faked, right? And when the customer places a purchase, then they refund it. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
And that exists throughout on a literally on all shades of gray. But when it comes to real interaction, that is why also in 2023 we see so many brands initiating their OMO, online merging offline integrations and campaigns and whatnot, right? So in store and also outside of store, because you don't just want this army of bots, you want real people and you want real connections in real life, apart from just digital. Beautiful. So who is doing well? When you look at the whole social CRM or social commerce and WeCom and all that, what are a couple of foreign brands and maybe Chinese brands that did well, and what are some of the guys that probably flopped?
I think that to answer your question, I would say that the biggest challenge for brands has been to trying to understand how they are moving forward with what they used to have, and like where they need to be in the future. So brands for a very longer amount of time, they've been relying heavily on the Tmall partners, like the Baozun, the Buy Quickly, the D1M, and so on, like to just like do everything for them, because again, it was easy. Like they have, obviously they have like great system, like great logistics setups, as well, and the opportunity to manage a lot of things for the brand. But the reality is, like, when it comes to doing the job of the TP, or when it comes to do the job of, like managing, first party data, that's a totally different job. So a lot of brands have actually, like decided to continue, like working, everything, giving everything to the TP. And what they see is that after, like 1 or 2 years, when the performance is not like up to their standards, oh, now my social CRM belongs to my Tmall partner. Oh, my CDP is the property of my TP. And like now, if I want to take those assets and migrate them towards, like things that are going to be, like more open source, or solutions that can be actually used, like by, like different companies or different consultancy, it's not possible anymore. So that's one of the big blockage we have seen from, like some of our, like customer that were kind of like prisoner from like the solution that was given to them. And it's been the case, like over and over again, like where companies will make the mistake of, like investing on like what seems to be a smaller CapEx to start with, but then afterwards, like this initial lower CapEx comes like with basically handcuff, at the end. So that's the biggest challenge. So in terms of, like brands, I think we have seen like a very strong rebound this year, which is, very interesting. So, some brands, I would say, the brands that will have like smaller presence, like let's say 2, 3, below 5 shops in terms of luxury, will be like struggling. And like most of the brands, when they come to have like a little bit more awareness around like 10, 20, 30, then like usually for most of them, especially in the fashion industry, I think they've been doing really extremely well. I think when it comes to, high jewelry or watches, some brands have been, like doing, a little bit better than other ones, depending on the price tag. I think a lot of like Chinese consumers are just, like waiting a little bit to, like be, like fully understanding, like if the economic rebound, is going to be really long term, or if it's going to be like short term. So like what we've seen is that customers, they're okay, like to buy like a LV t-shirt, or, like a LV garment for like, let's say 10,000 RMB. However, if they need to buy, like an Omega watch for like 150,000 RMB, maybe they're going to wait, like a little bit more. Maybe they're going to buy the one for like 50 or 60,000 RMB. So I think this is what we've seen on the market. Obviously, the market is going to, continue to evolve. But yeah, what we've seen is that December, January, like all brands were consumption, retail, offline, online, everything was dead because, everybody was home. And then now, everything has rebounded. And I feel like most of the brands that were already strongly established, they are growing. They're growing, I think, at a very fast pace. And obviously, like we have, all the LVMH brands that are doing, seems to be doing like really amazing. Obviously, depending on the category, depending on the brand, like different brands will have, different success. But same thing with, like the Kering brand, or we have like smaller groups like OTB as well that are doing really well, or like the Unilever Prestige brand, for example, or like other brands or other categories that are entering the Chinese market. So I would say like overall, like most of the brands now have rebounded very strongly, and like the investments at least in like the digital transformation are like becoming like stronger and stronger.
And when it comes to social commerce, if you could name 1 or 2 companies in the country where you see, be it domestic or international, where you look at it and says social commerce, private traffic, they really got it, they really leading the way, leading the pack, who would that be?
Yeah, I would say, like, for example, I'll take like a brand like Hublot. Hublot is very interesting how they approach, like the Chinese market. So like maybe every 2-3 months, they would do basically a campaign to do to sell limited edition in China. And those limited edition, they're going to sell like usually like 8, like pieces. And those 8 pieces, they will sell it only on their mini program. And usually the cost of that, like watch is going to be anywhere from like, let's say $20,000 to $30,000. And what you will see is that usually within like 1 or 2 minutes, all those 8 pieces will be gone. And the amount of traffic that is trying to buy it is like pretty substantial. So the reason is that obviously those watches are made like specifically for the Chinese market in limited edition. So like the collectors, like really want to, like purchase them. So kind of creates like a fear of missing out, which comes to kind of like the purpose, like of having like a private traffic. If you have private traffic and private traffic is just a copy of what you're doing for your Tmall and JD, it's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. Like, taking back the example of the brands that I was telling you earlier, that is making anywhere from 5 to like 12,000 orders every single day on their application. The chance is that if tomorrow they open a JD and a Tmall, like their scores will go like from like doing everything on private traffic to do maybe 0 on private traffic and do everything on Tmall and JD. So the idea is like, how do you keep a strategy of differentiation, like between the two? Or like if you want to differentiate your public traffic between the retail and the online as well, how can you make sure that you're going to be able to drive sometimes the user onto one and sometimes the user on the other one? So I think this is the most important. So having a clear defined strategy for each of the funnel and having like this like the opportunity to really have like that differentiation is really for me the key. Just don't copy paste.
Very good, very good. Next, you've mentioned it very quickly before. What about the data, the privacy, the use of that data within private traffic, right? Because once we own the first-party data, that also comes with a lot of responsibility, and it adds another layer of complexity if you are an international brand, and since recently, obviously operating within mainland China also requires complying with some laws on how you can or cannot move the data cross-border. So let's talk about them. What's your take on the whole situation?
Ashley, this is a very interesting and amazing question, which is like should keep up like some people at night more often. I would say that most of the brands, they're taking this matter seriously, but some brands they're not. And sometimes like I think this is quite important to notify them. So that's our role. Like when we see that they're not like aiming towards, like the right direction. So, the personal information protection law is, like for, like the people who are watching this video, a little bit like the European GDPR. So it means that basically, if you want to collect the data of like Chinese users, you need to kind of like obviously having their consent and like making sure that you're going to store this information in China, mostly on Chinese servers. So this has created a lot of challenges for the brand because, a lot of brands, they will have, like a very huge equipment like ERP, globally that they're not going to have in China, or they're going to have their global CRM, but not no CRM in China. So basically you will have a puzzle in China with a lot of like missing pieces. And like back in the day, it was okay to say, oh, like I'm going to not be, I mean, there was no PIPR compliancy, but let's say I'm not going to be like fully compliant. So the data is going to jump from like Chinese servers to global server, no problem. I'm just going to work on my term and condition to clearly indicate those in the terms and condition. Now, it's not necessarily that easy. So, companies that are taking like the matter very seriously, they're going to invest like hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure that, like they're going to be fully compliant from a system, like perspective, and from a compliancy and terms and condition perspective as well. So I think that right now, like it's something that is, there's not been like a very, like strong, company that has been fined, let's say like a huge amount for, like being like not 100% compliant. So I think some of the companies now, they're taking a little bit more, time, like 2 years ago when the PIPL came into effect, like, people were like super, like afraid. Now you see that they're moving towards it, but they're taking, like a little bit more casually, let's say. So our recommendation is to move towards it like very fast, because there's going to be at some point, like a clear idea of like, we need to execute and it needs to be done in a very specific way. So I still see, like a lot of those companies say, oh, we have this, but we still have our CRM and we're connecting, it's fine. So like we say, not really. So just be very mindful, talk to your lawyer, and like we need to make sure we're changing this quite fast, because that's like something that is just like above your head and that can fall at any given moment. So yeah, I mean, like the PIPL clearly has pushed company to localize even more in China, and I think it's going to be the case more and more. So companies need to fully understand, and actually understand, especially from the WeCom and the clienteling perspective, is like reinforcing that aspect. But at the same time, you have like some global solutions like Salesforce that are progressively localizing their infrastructure in China and piloting like some projects with the biggest like luxury powerhouses. So like we can foresee, I mean, like it's public knowledge, like that Salesforce, is coming to China and piloting their first project. It's written, all over their marketing and the WeChat official account and everything. So what we can see is that, there's going to be solutions in the future. So before there was no solution. So I think like the biggest challenge was like, how do you take, a puzzle that becomes like a little bit of a different puzzle, and how you make the pieces work together? So now in the future, like just by having, like the addition of like a CRM, I think it's going to help a little bit. It's not going to save and manage everything and solve everything, but I think it's going to be a step in that specific direction for brands. But all those topics are extremely complicated, especially if you're talking about like 15 or 20 different systems that need to interconnect like together. So this is like giving like a lot of different challenges to our
wherever
architects.
management is involved, IT is involved, and lawyers are involved. It's gonna take a lot of time to bring these three parties.
Absolutely.
The last couple of questions I have, and let's move away from the scary topics of PIPL and move on to clienteling. So you've mentioned this word a few times, and for those unfamiliar, clienteling is essentially when, let's say, a retail associate is establishing a long-term relationships, right, with customers based on their data and their preferences and their behavior. So clienteling, in other words, is customer management and customer servicing. What, in your view and professional opinion, is world-class clienteling that is expected in China today?
Okay, that's another good question. So the biggest challenge is actually like taking a step back. The biggest challenge with overall like clienteling is the ability from, if you look at, like the back office, and when I'm saying the back office, not the back office of your website, it's like how the company is working and integrated together. And I'm talking about the retail team, talking about the merchandising team, talking about the marketing team, the data team, and the IT team, and then all the different vendors that this organization and this company is going to use. If you want to have great clienteling, you need to ensure that you're going to have like kind of like a top-down approach where, like the GM is really fully onboarded with that, like specific clienteling, because clienteling is all about solidifying like all those departments together. If you don't have retail working with IT, it's not going to work. So I'll like we've been visiting, like a lot of stores, or we had the chance to discuss with, a lot of retail director of some of the top brands, and we go to them and say, oh, do you have WeCom? It's like, yeah, we have WeCom. And then they're like, so do you do this with WeCom? They're like, what about this? What about moment posting? What about retargeting? What about this kind of messaging? Oh, you can do all of this with WeCom. Say yes. So the reality is that, for example, tomorrow, if you want to fail at just like doing your clienteling, you just work, with the retail team and say, hey, here's WeCom. And the reality is that if they don't communicate, like with the CRM team, the data team, and so on, and the marketing and the PR company, they're not going to be able to have something sustainable. So the number one element is, how do you do change management throughout, all those departments that are so important for the company? Because you don't need to invest more than what you're doing. You need to repurpose actually what you're doing. That's going to be the key to saving your investments in terms of your P&L. If you do this in a wise way, then you're succeeding, because both your external and internal OPEX are going to remain as low as possible, and you're going to have amazing communication between your different teams. So that's the number one thing. The number two thing is making sure that you can do something that is not going to look like ChatGPT, where, you're just going to send like whatever, kind of like non-personal message like to the different users, and like being spammy at the same time. So the key element is to understand how to tag the user, and how to create specific personas, and how to leverage those personas in order to kind of like send the right message to the right user at the right moment. If you do those things, then you're going to have like world-class clienteling. And obviously, if you're lucky enough to work within an organization that already has like specific system, then you're going to be able to connect, like your CRM with your POS, with your clienteling app, and have the full understanding of like who this, like user is, because you cannot expect, all your sales associates to remember exactly, like all the details of, each and every single user. So if you do the right things right, like you're going to be like super successful, and you're going to be able to help clients on their, like buying journey. You're not going to, like make the client purchase, but you're going to make sure that between you and the client purchasing, there's going to be like zero resistance on that path. And if another brand has a lot of obstacle between the desire and the purchase, who is going to win is going to be the brand who has like zero friction
Seamless
from point A to point
journey.
Z. Exactly.
This is the way. Aurelien, fantastic. The last question for today: does loyalty exist in China when it comes to consumers? Woo! Let's go. Because a lot of people, and I will tell you, a lot of people that in my professional network and friends, they basically feel that as long as you are getting the customers are getting a service, getting a good deal, getting a special treatment, then they're gonna stay. The moment you are out of sight, the moment you are not trying hard enough, you're gone. So many say that there's no love, there's basically just Tinder dating. But other people have other opinions. So which camp are you on? Does loyalty exist in China?
So I would say loyalty exists in China for sure, but it's going to depend again on your category. Let's say you're cosmetic or FMCG or luxury. Like people are going to have like different expectation of like how their loyalty should be rewarded. If you're like FMCG, like like you're going to want some coupons, you're going to want some discounts. If you are like maybe in like the cosmetic or perfume, like you would expect like to have maybe access to like different kind of like customer service that will answer like very specific question for you that are going to be very important and very relevant. And if you're like in the luxury areas, you would like most likely expect to have access to like different collections or different limited editions, or to have access to like private events. I think this is like something that obviously doesn't only belong and exist in China, but we see more and more of the brands like putting this idea on the table. And the biggest challenge when it comes to building loyalty is that what should you consider when you're counting loyalty? Because like you have like, okay, people have been purchasing on Tmall and JD. Are you going to reward that loyalty, or are you just going to reward the loyalty of like the users that have purchased something on your mini program or your retail store? And if you want to reward the loyalty on all the different channels, it makes things extremely expensive to build, because like the access to those APIs of JD and Tmall are not easy to get, and like it's all the time changing, and there's always, you know, like different, you know, compliancy issue. So I would say that for most of the brands, I think one of the key is like how, like, again, how do you differentiate like private and public traffic? And one of the ways that you can do it is as actually, you know, like not only having like different editions, different collection on the private one, but also like making sure that if people purchase on your private areas, then like they're going to have the chance to build, you know, like this loyalty. But the loyalty, the most of the time, the issue is that people don't have the time to read, you know, like what the loyalty is about, unless they love the brand. Unless you're like a Chanel, then like people might not be like, or Longchamp, people might not be like super, you know, like interested. So I think the key is like really building something that is not complex for the user to understand, and then finding a way to ensure everything can work. And we've seen, for example, for some brands that are not like the top luxury brand, you know, having the like maybe lower medium sized brand, like having the chance to use like even coupons as well, you know, like for like some specific product to drive, you know, like the user to the stores, or, you know, again, giving them different experiences. So I think, you know, like there's different kind of reward, different types of tier systems. And I think like loyalty needs to be there. That's a certainty. Does it need to be a priority? No. But, you know, like that's, again, like following the pyramid that we were talking about, you know, having your foundation, your level 2, your level 3. I think for a lot of the brands that could be, you know, like part of level 3. But I would say that talking with a lot of like CIOs and CDOs, a lot of them, they're thinking, okay, you know, like next year, actually, like loyalty, we think is going to be the next big topic, or the following year. So you know, you see this like for the last 1 or 2 years, you see, okay, next year. So at some point, you know, when everything's going to be quite elaborated, like they will start focusing most likely on the loyalty. But I think it's going to take, yeah, probably 2024 is going to be maybe the big year for loyalty.
This is exciting. We finished on a beautiful note with the vision for 2024, and loyalty is indeed to come. I just recently came back from also a quick trip in Chengdu and Shanghai, and it was exciting to see how in the shop I was getting myself a t-shirt, how they were trying to loop me in their loyalty, so to say, program. And I kept asking, so what's in it for me? And then I just like, yeah, maybe our shop assistant will contact you, and maybe there will be some discounts. And I was like, I don't want maybe. What's in it for me right now? Why are you collecting my information? But yeah, it was very exciting because 3 different people tried, you know, the lady that was giving me the t-shirt, she tried to scan my QR code, basically join the loyalty program. I was like, what's in it for me? No, thank you. Then the guy that was looking at me once I came out and telling me, oh, this t-shirt looks good on you. Are you already a member of our CRM? And then when I was doing a checkout, a completely different third person, she was like, oh my God, yes, can I have your whatever membership number? I said, I'm not a member. Would you like to join our CRM? 3 people. So the whole, process, 15 minutes in the shop, 3 people asking me to join their CRM. I was like, this is now serious.
Very committed, very committed.
Very committed, very well-trained staff. It wasn't annoying, even though it was 3 times. It wasn't annoying, so very well-trained staff. I think they're like basically trying to loop me in this program like salesmen working on commission, as if they get specific rewards for looping me in. Aurelien, thank you so much for today. We have learned a lot about private traffic, about building this social CRM and also social commerce applications in China. Looking forward to bringing you again into other shows and having your expertise for other cool stuff. How can people connect with you if they would like to talk about building those journeys in China?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley. It was a really good conversation. I think like most of the brands, like they are having those kind of challenges, whether like they're already in China or like they are, you know, like globally thinking about, you know, like their Chinese team and China business. People can easily connect with us, you know, like going on IT, you know, -consultis.com, or you know, like if people want to add me on WeChat and talk to me directly, Aurelien-R. They can connect with me, and like if you want, you know, like drop, you know, our contact directly, it's okay too. But thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you so much again. Guys, we're going to drop all the contact info for Aurelien and IT Consultants below. Do get in touch if you are interested in exploring more on how to build private traffic and make it work for you in China. Meanwhile, stay tuned for other Ashley's Digital China episodes to come. We're going to cover exciting topics from tourism to luxury to, again, building CRMs, for example, for B2B companies in the next episodes. Have a great week ahead, and we're going to chat soon.